The most disrespected person in America is the black woman.
Gino has to be held back.
And the protocol is two coaches meet at half court and they shake hands. And I waited there for like 3 minutes.
I don't want what happened there to dampen what we were able to accomplish today.
But actually, this person is asking if we have permission to take these photos.
I can't take pictures with the wall.
The most unprotected person in America is the black woman.
A real judge.
My name is Michael Khalil. I'm a circuit court judge here in Jacksonville, Florida. They're asking for an emergency C-section be granted by the court.
I have not had a chance to be able to consult with my own legal representation.
The most neglected person in America is the black woman.
The disproportionate rate at which black women and girls are murdered or go missing.
What you just saw were multiple stories featuring black women all doing the right thing, and yet they were each treated like they were the problem. Malcolm X said it in 1962, and it still holds today that black women are the most disrespected and unprotected in America. And so we are here today to unpack that on the Our Power Lounge.
Welcome to Our Power Lounge, where we invite you to come as you are and leave more powerful. I'm your host, Tatianna Mott, and this is what power sounds like.
This is our power.
Welcome back to the Our Power Lounge with our first in-person episode, and I'm so excited because we have three wonderful guests here today, so I'm going to go ahead and introduce them to you. We have Zyn Perkins, who is making sure she stays hydrated, which is why it doesn't crack.
Hello.
She is a Houston-based visual artist who went viral recently, unfortunately not just because her art is so awesome, but because of something that she had to experience while showing off that art. We are going to talk about that in a bit, but I'd like to also introduce Dr. Kai, who is a civil rights attorney who is going to break down the law behind a lot of these things that we are going to be discussing. And then I'd also like to introduce the fabulous Banke Awopetu, an author, educator, and comedian who you may recognize because she recently went viral on a local news show talking about a similar topic about black women being the most vilified in America. And while she was on that show, it was almost like the proof was in the pudding, as she herself was vilified. So we are here to unpack all of that, and here we go. So let's see. I'd like to start with acknowledging the fact that every woman at this table is phenomenal. Is someone that I would consider, or what society would consider professional, mild-mannered sometimes. And yet everyone on this panel has dealt with some of these things that we say, black women had it coming or whatever. But I also just want to acknowledge how awesome you each are before we talk about anything else. And so I'd also like to ask, how are you doing today?
Doing pretty good.
Doing pretty good?
Thank you.
How are you doing?
I'm making it through newborns, so I'm in that newborn stage. Sleep when I can, but I'm making it through. Twins.
Ooh.
How you know?
You said newborns.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm gonna say twins was the best case scenario with newborns.
Right.
Having triplets, quadruplets.
Right, that's true. Multiples.
Well, you don't look like you got twins at home.
That's a fact. That's a fact.
Happy to have you.
How are you doing, Banke?
Grateful. Yeah, grateful to be here. Just to be in our company. I love how you started that, and even we're sitting in our power, literally.
And that is the whole point, right? Because so much of what happens in this country and in society is to try to take us out of that power. So I'm glad that we can remember that we are in it always. So I'd like to start with, before we get into your personal stories, I'd like to start with some stories that we saw in that intro clip, things that are happening around us right now. So we've got, of course, Coach Dawn, who is an Olympic winning athlete, who is a coach who changed the sport of basketball. She is legendary, and yet the thing that she was most in the news for recently was for a heated disagreement with another coach. There was a lot of discussion around, if she were a white man, would that have gone down the way it went down? And for those who don't know the context, she was accused of having not shook his hand, and as we saw from the footage, she did indeed shake his hand. So do we see this anywhere else, or what are your thoughts on this particular incident, especially when you have a woman who is professional, but also strong. She can hold it down on the court with the rest of them. How do you see that incident happening? Like, what are your thoughts on it?
I think, to your point about her accolades, right, and how she was really able, she built up the South Carolina program. Like, there was no program before Dawn Staley, right? So we could look at this two ways. So you could look at it through just the athletic lens, and I've heard that argument that, coaches get into it all the time, that might have just been his personality, right? But I think what his intention was actually happened, because after this moment, I won't say all of us, but collectively, it seemed like we were discussing the disrespect more than the fact that she had whooped his ass.
Right.
She beat him. And then it became such a distraction. Even she was asked about it, and she's like, I want to focus on the next game, because she was going to the championship. And then she ended up losing. And I feel like when we're addressing the disrespect that Black women go through, is very real, is very valid, right? And there's something to not internalizing that disrespect, right? Because what you give your energy grows. And I really blame us for the fact that she lost the championship, but that's my take.
There was so much discourse and so much just negative energy around it.
Right.
And also the fact, like, she won, right? This is supposed to be the moment where we're supposed to be able to celebrate
Exactly.
and live in that. And too often we see where those moments are getting snatched back from us. So I actually want to segue that into you, in that this is a moment where you are celebrating your art and you're showing it off, taking pictures of it. I do want to get into the good things that happened after this incident, but I want to, what were you feeling in that moment, especially as I see you sitting here? You are very calm, very mild-mannered, very just a gorgeous, lovely, energetic woman, or lovely energied woman. And there were, like, how many? Was it 7?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
6 or 7.
6 or 7 grown men.
But just to quickly make a point that kind of ties into what you guys were just saying, I feel like as a Black woman, everyone expects us to dim our light and make ourselves smaller in situations where, hey, now it is my time to shine. It really is my time to shine. So give me that grace and let me just take my flowers in peace, and don't say, oh, she had a bad attitude, or this person, you know what I mean? And so I think that tying that back into the situation, I had been looking at this wall for a minute. I don't know if you guys are like me, where you kind of like, you want to do something and you'll kind of hyperfixate over it a little. You might not get it done right away, but it's sitting in the back of your mind. Like, I really want to go take this picture, or I really want to go to this restaurant. And I go to Joey's and I go to Cheesecake Factory all the time. I love both of those places, depending on which price I'm trying to spend is depending on which
Right.
It's a happy hour, you know? Right.
Exactly. So, going back and forth, walking up those same stairs all the time, going back and forth to those restaurants, I was looking at that wall like, okay, I know exactly what painting I'm going to use whenever I get the time. So I texted a friend of mine. I'm like, hey, tomorrow, let's go take pictures, so everything was planned a specific day. And when I got there, I realized that the painting, I didn't need to prop it up on my easel, that there was a little ledge where the painting was able to balance. So I was excited. I was, it's just the small little wins. We were like, yes, this is going to look great in the pics. And I kind of did like a little cheering motion. I'm like, yay. And I went and got a piece of tape so I could kind of like keep it in place while the wind was blowing. And I'm thinking from afar the whole time this lady's watching me cheer, watching everything.
That joy.
Looking like, what is that? And so I see her, but I'm thinking, oh, she likes it. Like she thinks it looks
And she
good.
does. She's a fan.
Right. That's the undercurrent.
Yeah, somebody was saying if it would have been Trump on the painting, she would have came and got in a picture.
Right.
So as she comes closer, we're just now starting to get the pictures, and she's already like pulling on her phone. And as when she gets right up on me, I introduce myself. I'm like, hey, I'm Zyn. This is my art. Are you, did you want more information about it? And she just looks at me and shaking her head like, girl, this ain't that kind of party. And I'm like, oh, okay. And immediately I pull out my phone because I could tell from her energy, she's like, you didn't get permission. And I told her, I said, I did get permission. The people that had this store, whose store that was, actually came on the camera and asked me what I was doing. I let them know I'm just taking some pictures in front of your orange wall. They said, okay. And I tried to relay that to her, like, hey, no, they've already come on the camera. They've already asked me. She says, no, but you didn't get the actual Louis Vuitton's permission. Like,
and who is she, his wife?
Right.
So I'm like, oh, and as soon as I'm, starting to record her, she starts walking away. There was already a guard walking up as she's walking away.
So was he responding to her, or he just happened to be there?
I think he was coming because when she was standing there, she walked over with a guard. If you see the first video, it was a guard in red. She waited for him once by the time she got close, she was already with another guard. So I'm thinking the other guard was watching from afar and seeing like, well, what's going on over there? And so as she walks away, another guard is kind of coming closer. She calls whoever she calls, and then that's when the swarm of people, it happened within a matter of minutes.
And it really was a swarm.
Yes, it happened so fast. Some people were like, just get the picture. And I was telling them, like, well, what I had envisioned was a short video of me walking up to the painting, catching it in a certain way. And although I was still trying to do that while all of this was going on, it was hard and distracting for me. I didn't know. I'm like just trying to rush it, like, just hurry up, take a picture.
But some good did come out of it.
Yes. So the piece from the video sold.
Look at that. See, because she liked it. She was a fan and tried to block your blessing and ended up helping you.
Yes, I honestly think it turned out better than it would have had I just got one little pic and posted it to my normal following. I got to meet all of you ladies sitting here on this panel. There is, I won't speak too much in advance because they're building a new spot inside the Galleria, and that spot actually hit me up and they said they want to do some murals inside of their store inside the Galleria.
Look at God. See, and so I also want to jump to you, Dr. Kaya, to talk about the legal implications of what she dealt with. Before I even get to that, there's so many things when we're being disrespected, it doesn't stick, and that just pisses people off even more.
Yeah.
But speaking of it not sticking, so what were the legal ramifications of what she experienced? Was she actually breaking any laws?
Yeah, so the unfortunate part is that, so if we're in the context of a store or a mall, it seems as though it's a public space, but essentially it is a private entity. So they can't have laws or rules for their property saying, if you can't take pictures, you can't be in certain places, blah, blah, blah. But that has to be written and given out to the public. So I'm not privy on if those were rules. However, they can discriminate against you based upon race, gender, different things of that nature if you are breaking a particular law. And it also isn't the authority of a civilian to be able to enforce those things, especially if those rules, exactly, especially if those rules aren't given to the public. Right. So technically, if they didn't put out those rules to the public to say, hey, you can't take pictures at particular stores, you can't do X, Y, and Z, you weren't breaking any laws, but they do have the authority as a private entity to say that. But yeah, from what you're saying, it doesn't seem like they gave that energy, and so the security just coming and saying you have to leave or you get arrested doesn't seem like it was legal, especially if they didn't tell you what rules you were breaking.
And so why do you think they even have the gall to do that? Is it because they know that we don't know our rights or that we can't push back?
Yeah, honestly, I think it's one, because generally we don't know our rights, or we don't know specifically what to ask them for pushback. And then if they're are civilians giving them any type of pushback, they generally don't want to deal with the conflict of that. The security guards half the time don't even know the rules. So they're probably okay, this civilian is saying something, let me not lose my job by just letting them go. Honestly, it's probably something as basic as that, because security guards aren't police officers or law enforcement. They generally are just there for a job, to be honest.
Right. And one thing I'd like to point out too is that the racial makeup of the security guards. Yeah. They were mainly black men and men of color.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. And so, is there any dynamic, this could be for the three of y'all, do you see any dynamic between the way black men interact with black women, especially in these scenarios where you would figure, a brother gets this call, maybe he's gonna look out for me?
Well, going back to they don't know the rules, right? And then it's going to come down to which civilian do you think has the most legitimacy? And for the most part, we've been conditioned in this country to think white is right.
Yeah.
And then also we know what a Karen is capable of, right? So even when Zyn is giving pushback and she's, sharing her perspective on it, who's more likely to escalate it to their supervisor? Who's more likely to cause them issue with the check that they're trying to get?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I was going to say that. And sometimes when it comes to like black men or just black people in general with their jobs, they'll do anything for that check. Like, honestly, and especially because of the nature of us being impoverished as a whole, not everyone. A lot of times people are like, well, you're not about to do anything to jeopardize my job, so I'll throw you out, just to make sure that I have my job. So I have seen where, skin folk ain't kin folk because they need to get that check.
It's such a shame too, because when a society, especially as black people and as women, we got the double edged sword.
Yeah.
So when society is going to throw someone on the bus, if chances are it's most likely going to be us, that means you're going to have people who are skin folk, who are going to be in those positions where they're like, I can't lose my job. I got a family to feed. Sorry,
Exactly.
Exactly. So I kind of want to touch on that a little bit more too. So we had some other incidents as well that we saw in the package of, unfortunately, as traumatic, and your situation was definitely traumatic. I'm so glad that you got out of that safely and that they didn't escalate it further. Unfortunately, we've seen situations where it does escalate to the point of someone being physically harmed or losing their lives.
Yeah.
And most recently, that happened with Ashley Janae in Tanzania with her boyfriend turned fiance.
Yeah.
And then we also saw it more recently with Cerina Fairfax. And there's been an interesting, as tragic as both of those situations are, and I do want to give that gravity, but I don't want to linger on trauma. As tragic as both of those situations are, to me, the interesting conversation was what happened around that, and the discourse of how someone losing their life was talked about amongst community. So with Ashley, because of something she may have said online, there were a lot of skin folk who were like, oh, well, she shouldn't have been with a black man. But then here, literally
white man.
Days later, is someone who is married to a black man and had the same fate. So, I don't know if there's anything that you've seen in the law as far as how black women are treated in domestic violence situations. But if are you able to speak to that?
Yeah, so I'll say in general, when it comes to domestic violence, there are not a lot of laws around domestic violence. So generally what is a traumatic issue in our field is that unless there's actual physical harm that can be proven, they can't do anything. So say that you're being emotionally abused or threatened, or you can't prove that you actually got these bruises from your spouse, the police will just tell you, you have to actually have video or pictures or recordings of those incidents to actually make the person leave the home. And so that's why a lot of instances end up resulting in death, because there has to be so much evidence to prove. I've had clients come to me about them being abused and them calling the police, but the police will come and say, well, because of community property, you can't make them leave the home, so you need to leave the home. Or say, like, I've had women that they're primarily the person paying the mortgage, and so they're like, well, if I leave the house, I still have to pay the mortgage, but you're saying that he can stay here because it's community property, but if I stay here, he's abusing me. And it's like they can't generally do anything. So it's really, really unfortunate when it comes to domestic violence. And the further part about that, when we're talking about dating a black or a white or just someone that's not in our race, a lot of times black women end up dating outside of their race due to not feeling protected by black men, unfortunately. And I know that there are systemic things around that when it comes to provision and finances and the trauma that they've had. But when there's conversation around saying like, okay, well, she deserved it because she's with a white man, it's like, well, then when do we have to hold our black men accountable for not protecting us as black women, and then us feeling like we have to go outside of our race to be able to get the provision and live the lifestyle that we feel like we're afforded? So there's very many, trinkets that are associated with that. But when it comes to domestic violence, there are not enough laws to make sure that we're protected overall.
Yeah. And so if the law can't protect us, how do we get to a place where our men
Guns.
can protect us?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Well, yeah. I always advise people that is
Keep
an
it
option.
38. You understand me?
I always advise people to have family members. So like whenever women come to me and we can't do anything legally because they don't have enough evidence, I'm always encouraging them around a support system or advising them around financial protection. So it's like if your dad, your uncle, your brother, your cousin, it's like, all right, he not about to beat you with all them in the house with you, or you go in there, or they come and like address him and different things of that nature. Because usually an abuser is just abusing the woman, but he doesn't
they're
have,
normally punks.
he don't have it to go against another man. So I do always advise them to get a support system of men that are in their family that can protect them that way. But then also having the financial autonomy, like if you have your own money, you have your own education, you can go fend for yourself and your children, you can leave. But it's that sometimes we end up going into this housewife role, not saying that being a housewife is a bad thing or anything like that, but sometimes I always advise people, if you're going to be a housewife, you still need to have your own income, because anything can happen. You need to be able to make sure that you're not stuck in a situation just because you don't have the finances to get out of that situation. So
guns and funds.
Listen, it be like that.
Yeah.
So I know that this is a panel full of wonderful women, right? Which means that it's probably going to be watched by also wonderful women.
Yeah.
But if we could speak to the men, right? If we do get men watching it, what do we tell them? Because they're watching people that don't look like us with microphones saying the very opposite of what we're saying.
Right.
And unfortunately, it's that red pill mentality. They're really believing the coup. I don't want to use that phrase, but they're really believing the hype that black women are the problem, right? So if we could speak to our brothers right now, what would we tell them to break them out of the red pill? Let's give them the purple pill.
I was just thinking something. I'm glad you asked that, because I was just thinking something in my mind. I was thinking, just like they say, not all men. Just like you mentioned, those brothers, the dad, the uncle. We do have good black men that are out here stepping for us. And a black man bought the painting. There was a black man opening the shop in the Galleria. So there's a lot of black men that are out there coming to our rescue.
For sure.
And I think where they fall short is when these are their friends and these are their buddies and these are their colleagues. Exactly. When you guys are out for drinks or whatever, and you know that this guy is disrespecting women, you just saw him grab up on another girl, say something. Be that one to make it awkward and say, you know what, bro, that's not cool. So that's kind of where I think, if anything, we want y'all to hold y'all's friends accountable, just like a lot of black women that call ourselves some type of, I don't know the word, I don't want to say high value.
Baddies,
right. Yeah, any woman that carries herself like she cares about herself, she's gonna look at her girls the same way. Like, I don't want you cheating on your husband because that's gonna make me look bad, and that's just not what you need for you, you know?
Yeah, they're going to do exactly what you just did, which is center the conversation on not just the outliers that we're seeing, but remind us that there are positive black men. And I feel like that is the majority. Like, the internet is not a real place, and the people who are the most vocal and the most visible on the internet are outliers, right? Because I rarely comment on stuff, right? I have a lot of things I could say, but I know that for the most part, it's adversarial in the comments. So when we're looking at things and we think like, oh, black men hate us, because it's only the assholes who comment. It's the same thing with who actually leaves reviews. People are more likely, if there's something negative, to leave a review, Right. But most of my experiences in real life with black men, to your point, is supportive. I actually had a show a few years ago. My best friend was in town for this, and a white man had just came in at Dean's, had just came in off the street, and unbeknownst to me, he was behind me doing all types of crazy stuff, and I'm just on the mic, and this black man, who I really did not know that well, like, when I joked him out and pushed him like he was the bouncer, you know what I mean? Yeah. So in those instances of protect black women, I think that is more prevalent than not. Going back to the case of Ashley Janae, I think sometimes, like you said, I don't know if the term is high value or baddie or whatever, there can be like animosity when people are doing well or better than the person who's viewing it, right? And so it's like, okay, she was already like a lifestyle content creator, she's already unattainable, right? Then she's with this white man, right? And then they look back at comments that she said about Black men. I've heard that was in response to people or Black men criticizing her choice of partner. I can't speak to that. I don't know. But we did see something similar happen when, I think this was in the South, it was a Black man who was making all these posts about, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
A Black woman can never get me, this is my queen. And when I tell you, she was a snowflake of all snowflakes, right? And then she ended up saying that the gun accidentally discharged. It seems like she killed him, right? And then so Black women had the same energy towards him and his family, like, oh, well,
right.
So I think it goes both ways. And when we're talking about just gender wars or red pill content or whatever, I love that you said purple pill. We have to be as intentional and as loud as they are.
Yep. Yeah,
because we need each other.
Yeah, we 100% need each other. And that is why, you know, being in media, I know that the stuff that does well, the stuff that's pushed by the algorithm,
right?
It's
rage bait.
It's rage bait.
Yeah.
And it's
so men. Forget men. I hate all men. I really love y'all though. Okay.
And that's what we're gonna start the episode with. But yeah, no, it's definitely intentional, and not only is it rage bait because people engage with that type of content more because something about a human psyche, we just love misery, we love terrible things, but it's also incentivizing the division. Because if we all knew that we were respected and we were loved and we're in this together, we would be unstoppable.
Right.
Definitely.
In the same way, like with your artwork, right? After someone tried to stall your progress, tried to tear down your spirit, it was a Black man that came to buy your art, right? And that's an instance of Black women being respected. So it does happen.
Definitely.
But systemically, it is programmed into people to not do that.
That's true.
And so that's with the red pill content. But even outside of Black men, white women, white men, you know, there's also, if we ran the world, if Black women ran the world, if Kamala was president, which no one's ready for, we don't know what would have happened. We know it wouldn't be what's happening now.
For sure.
Right? And that is their biggest fear.
Yeah.
So how do we, as Black women, having to go up against that biggest fear, how do we still make sure that we have space, that we still have progress, that we still have success?
Yeah. I want to throw out a term, eugenics. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that, and like population control and different things. And I really feel like eugenics is the stem of or the root of a lot of our issues, even when it comes to not protecting Black women. And so subconsciously, we may not know that that's what we're doing because society has trained us to make sure that we're divided, whether it's relationally, whether it's making sure that our babies are dying or we're dying or different things, but it is to control the population within the Black race. And so it like shows up in multiple different areas. And so I think one way that we can combat that is just to have that knowledge of like, hey, you know, they're trying to turn the Black man against the Black woman for a reason, because they know that if we unify, there are many strides that we'll make, and they don't want us to be able to control or have autonomy over finances, education, property, all of the things. And so if we start there, then we can maybe start to learn our traumas, or then or even understand that, hey, like we all are still suffering from post-traumatic slave syndrome. So, you know, not just like feeling like, okay, it's just us that need to get healing. It's also our counterparts that need to get healing. Yep. And so if we work towards that together, then we can make sure that we're protected. But then also just communication. So even when we're talking about maternal health, I think that that's one of like the main areas where we end up suffering, whether it's through pregnancy or birth or postpartum. I think that a lot of women don't get protected through that journey of their life, and maybe it's not talked about as much. But I think that if we start to talk about how we need to protect the life givers, because the thing is that we birth nations, and without us, our population would stop. So we need to focus on, you know, making sure that the woman is protected, because I think that sometimes men forget, hey, if these women are producing our babies, then our culture as a whole will stop. So they should should be protected amongst all. And so if we start there and just, reminding them and like, hey, don't just think about it as only protecting your mother and your sister. Look at all women as your mother and your sister. Like, how are you treating the other women that aren't just in your family? And remember that they're also birthing nations. I think that would help.
Yeah, and that's a great point too. If men will say something about like, "Oh, if that was my sister," and it's like, "Well, let's pretend she was."
Yeah.
Or like, "Oh no, I would never let my homie date my sister." It's like, well, then why are you okay with him dating anyone else?
Right. Exactly.
Exactly. I find it very interesting that there has to be that level of respect.
Yeah.
You have to have that level of proximity to get respect. But I do want to touch on, you mentioned Black maternal health.
Yeah.
And then we saw in the package with Cherise Doyley, who is a doula. That is what she does for a living. She knows what needs to be done in a birthing situation. And she made a decision about her own body and was called into court while in active labor. And so when we know what's best for us, like she wasn't able to have her husband or a brother or an uncle or her sisters or her tribe. When we know what's best for us and we find ourselves in situations where thankfully you at least had your friend with you, what can we draw on? And I hate that I even feel like asking this, but what can we draw on? I know my answer would be God. But what can we draw on to get us through a society that, is practicing eugenics against us?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I would say first, what they did seems extremely unethical. Hospitals do have a level of compliance that they have to follow. However, you still have autonomy over your own body, and you are able to sue the hospitals. It's just that process seems extremely
arduous.
It's just like I've seen
so much you can do.
It's only so much. I've tried to see people do malpractice suits or even sue hospitals due to maternal botches or even when it comes to C-sections and different things of that nature. And it never ends up resulting in their favor just because of finances. Like the hospitals are heavily financed,
right?
And she couldn't even have her own lawyer present.
Yeah, exactly. And so, one, that was illegal because they should have made sure that she had representation, and that you always have to make sure that someone has representation prior to even bringing them to a court sentence. You're supposed to put them on notice first. So they didn't even put her on notice. So they already failed there. But I would say starting to practice, even considering home births or considering birthing centers or different things of that nature. Because sometimes when we do go into the hospital, I like to call it the belly of the beast. Because sometimes when you get there, you don't have control anymore. And it's really scary that you can compare it to like jail almost. That is like if you try to leave, especially when you're having a baby, then they threaten CPS on you, or they threaten to call the police on you or to arrest you. Like they'll say, for example, if they want to give your child vaccines or your child is in the NICU and you want to take them out. Now you have the right to, but you have to sign a against medical advice form. And when you sign that, if something happens to your child later and you then have to take them to the hospital later in their life, they're able to arrest you for child neglect because you went against medical advice during their birth or refuse the vaccines or different things of that nature. So sometimes it is best options to avoid them at all costs or to find a Black clinic, which unfortunately those are a rarity, but trying to find a Black clinic, trying to find a Black doctor, or doing the best that we can with home remedies and home care is something that I always advocate for, because I rarely have seen great outcomes from women ended up having to go to the hospital. And that is also in a sense of women that don't want a lot of medication. So sometimes if women are okay with medication, they're okay with surgical things, maybe they have a good experience there. But women that generally don't want surgery or they're like trying to get limited medication, that's generally when you get the pushback, because now you're messing with their money. They get more money when you get a C-section. They get more money when you get those pharmaceuticals. So I definitely would just encourage women to do, their research prior, try to do home remedies, herbs, looking at doulas and midwives. And even if you do have a doula and midwife, like getting extra advice, because like you said, she was a doula, but even if you're a doula, if you're not eating healthy, you might still end up in a situation like that. Or even if you are a doula, you know, your past history with your medicals or with your body like could result in you ended up needing to go to the hospital, because birthing is just hard in general. So I understand if she felt like,
you would know.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, I understand if she felt like, okay, let me go get an epidural or something. That's probably why she went to the hospital, because she's like, this pain is excruciating. Like, let me go there. So I understand why she did that. But it's just still having those extra people there with you would help. And I know they said, I think that they refused her to have people come in or something to that nature. I'm not sure.
And then I think it was that overnight, like she was able to say no to the C-section, but they were like, if anything happens with the baby, then we'll have to go through the C-section.
Yeah.
And so overnight they were saying that the baby's heart rate changed or something. So she ended up having to go into the C-section.
And what I've have found too with women that have had similar, because I hear the scenario that happened with her, I've heard it multiple times now, not them bringing the court, but them saying
doulas and they can't come in.
Yes. And I feel like every time that I hear a woman say she was forced to a C-section, it's because they say that the baby's heart rate dropped. And so to me, that draws red flags in my head of like, hey, you all are putting something in the IVs when these women are, you know, put on, or you're just saying that to scare them.
So
to
they're like
be
the
like
medical stop resisting?
Yes. Like I hear that.
Really
That's every single woman I know had a C-section has told me, hey, like they said the baby's heart rate was dropping when I was having contractions. And so I didn't want, you know, something to happen to my baby. So I just told them it was okay for a C-section. And so to me, it's like, that can't be happening to all of us. And so I think that it's either a medication type of thing or it's just their way of scaring us into doing what they want.
Yeah,
Into making more money.
Yeah, and I was going to say, and the thing about that too is part of Black women being the most unprotected is that, they're going to do whatever they can to make money regardless.
Yeah, for sure. We're still the backbone of the economy.
Right.
And then when you're talking about eugenics, or even we're talking about the history of birthing in this country, or even gynecology in this country, we know that we were experimented on, right? Yeah. We don't need anesthesia because we have such a high threshold for pain. If we're talking about HeLa cells, like, again, you said we birth nations, like the cure to, there's so much to be mined literally from us, right?
Henrietta Lacks.
This is what I'm saying to you. Yeah.
And then when it comes to maybe not all white women, but like a white woman who has means, who has a husband who maybe is high profile, it'll be a lot harder to get over on her. The same way, you know, they could experiment on us for the all of the things that they had to learn about gynecology. It's because we were unprotected, because we were enslaved, or we were lower class, or whichever. Now that still lingers. Right? You can't try that with someone who's going to make a phone call and call 7 security guards.
Right. Yeah. But and then it's like there's sometimes money and position is still not enough to even shield and protect us. Because we heard about Serena Williams' birthing story, right? And it's like, okay, she's close to a billionaire, and she was still at whims or not having power or agency in that moment. If you're in the hospital, to your point, they got you. Yeah.
And then it makes you think about how back in the day, you know, when we had our villages, where it was the women that took care of us. It was the women that rallied around us. And so we talked about our men and talked about, you know, what they could potentially do better or how we could communicate to them what our needs are. But how do we communicate to ourselves, how we protect ourselves as well?
Well, community in and of itself is inconvenient.
Elaborate.
So I think to be in community with somebody means I'm invested in you. It means that I prioritize you. It means I'm going to have to make compromise. It means at times I'm going to have to put you before my own needs, right? Because of capitalism, everybody trying to get their coin, right? Now we have therapy culture, which for the most part is positive, but going back to the social media and what trends well, okay, boundaries, I'm going, no contact with people. I have to censor myself. Okay. And I think that that's actually playing into the loneliness epidemic, right? Because we know a lot of people, but I feel like the strength of those connections and people really being willing to, again, it's a give and a take, right? To do that and do the work of community, because community is also going to be conflict. How do we resolve it? How do we push through it? And if all the members don't see that there's an inherent value, we need each other. But more and more, we're being told to do you, YOLO, get your bag, and those things do not a community make.
Yeah, and I think also giving each other grace and understanding that part of the angry Black woman stereotype. I went through a situation where I had just lost someone very close to me, and then I lost a dream job. It was like back-to-back things. And you met my mom, and you know that we're very close. That's my best friend. That's my girl. And one day I just snapped at her, fussed at her, went to my room, and was like, did I just yell at my mom?
Not mama.
Right. I was like, I don't ever yell at my mom. I was like, I'm still mad at her, but I'm going to go down and apologize.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to yell at you. And my mom is a social worker, so she can pick up on certain things. She said, that's okay. That's a symptom of depression. And I was like, oh, am I depressed? And she already had a list of therapists. She's like, I was just waiting for you to ask. You know, and so I think about that a lot when I come across a sister who may snap at me. I'm like, I wonder if she's going through something.
Right.
Yeah. You know, and brothers as well. Like, I give everybody grace.
Right.
Sometimes I give too much grace.
Yeah.
But, you know, how do we learn to give each other that type of grace?
One thing I will say that, and it's a really small thing that a friend of mine a long time ago, he said, I always speak to all the Black people I see. And when he told me that, I was like, I'm going to start doing that. Sometimes I forget, you know, sometimes I'm in my head, but when I remember and I see usually, you know, a Black woman and I'm like, hey, she's like, me? Like, hey, I'm like, hey, girl. She's like, hey. It kind of feels good just to know, hey, I see you. Hey, keep going. You know what I mean?
That's
For
funny.
sure.
I think that's like a thing for people that grew up in non-white spaces. So like if you grew up in a space with a lot of Black people, like Houston, for example, it's just normal for you to see Black people. But I grew up in Wisconsin, so that's always a thing there. Like if you see another Black person, hey, nod them, hey, wave at them. It's just like, we know we all right here. And so that's something that I've taken throughout my life too. So I love that. And I love what you said too. I heard something that's like, you have to be a villager to have a village. And sometimes people want a village, but they don't want to be the villager as well. And so I think that comes into play. So we have to just like practice that too. That like, hey, if you want people to be there for you, you have to be there for them as well, I think. And then also just accumulating more information. I think that a lot of times, because we're in this like melting pot situation, that we in you know, DEI and different things, we kind of have taught our children that like we can mix and mingle with everyone, and you can to a certain extent, but you can't forget the history, because forgetting the history makes you forget the nature of that person or that kind, and makes you feel like nothing can ever happen again. But we could see in the society that we're in right now that people are showing their true colors of the nature of the way that they were growing up, and they can't really cover up their true beliefs. And so if we teach our children to just be like aware of what they're you know, suscepting themselves to, and like who to trust and different things, and I think it would make us be more kinder to ourselves to know that we're all we got, essentially.
Yeah, and I love that. You can't have a village without being a villager. And then you also cannot village with people who are not villagers.
Yeah.
Because like we said earlier, all skin folk are not your kinfolk. Some people do not have the capacity. And you have people who are very community oriented, and then you have people who are capitalists. And very rarely do those things mix. And it's just understanding who's who and moving accordingly.
Banke, you were on a show recently, and you were given a space to talk about our Black women the most vilified in America. But it doesn't really seem like you got that space to actually say what you want to say. At one point, you were getting ready to cook, and so I kind of want to let you finish the thought.
And the truth of the matter is, our divine essence is what's intimidating. And so you find these very visceral reactions to us just existing as everybody.
We're going to take a quick break here. We'll come back and let Jasmine and Carmen wrap us up. We'll be back. Stay with us.
You were going to mention about the 600,000 Black women losing jobs, and also how we are the backbone of society and we are divine. So go ahead and let us know what you were actually trying to say.
Well, when I got the invitation to go on that show, I know the nature of live television, and I also know the nature of that particular broadcast. And we've been talking about rage bait and different things. And I also knew that our opponents, I'll say, were going to be present, right? So even when I was deciding whether to go, I was really on the fence. A week prior, I had been invited to go on the show, but it was like some gender war stuff. And I was like, I am not participating. Like, we need each other, right? But I had that conversation at a hair salon. So everybody chimed in when I hung the phone up, and they were like, well, the conversation is going to happen. Don't you want your perspective to be there? So that kind of, I was like, So the next week when I get the call to come on to talk about the vilification of Black women, knowing that there's going to be 2 non-Black women on that panel, so why would that even be the case?
Right.
You know,
especially when the men's panel were all Black men.
Exactly. So you know it's a setup for it to be sparring, right? And I don't like conversational combat. I like to talk to people because I really want to understand your perspective, even if I don't agree with you. Yeah. I have that annoying, like, Obama trait where I believe that consensus and changing hearts and minds is possible. But when you have people who have certain things in the bloodline, it's not always possible. Yeah. But anyway, so that was the energy that I went into. I was just very prayerful because I already knew it was a setup, right? But I was like, okay, I want to speak to the 600,000 Black women who are experiencing push out because I had experienced that in this last year. So like, and Tatianna has, pointed this out throughout this, like the kind of women that we are, we check the respectable boxes, right? So hopefully the idea is if this happens to me, then it lets you know that it's not because I did something wrong. Right. But in this past year, I had police mistaken identity. I was at a Cypress park and ride on foot, and police with guns surrounded me, made me get down, handcuffed me, all this in front of my fiance, right? Okay, cool. My mother was wrongfully arrested basically for being old, and she was detained for 28 days. Okay, cool. And I was pushed out of the workforce, all within 12 months, right? So again, when I get this invitation, this is what I have in my mind, like I'm going to speak to. Yeah. I know that, and God gives us all different types of gifts. And I want to speak to this again, because even if it is a ratchet Black woman with a bonnet and fuzzy slippers and she's loud or whatever, she also deserves respect, right? She's a part of the village as well. Yeah. And that's normally the part of the village that's going to turn up, right? Because I'm sure your friend was kind of like you, right? But had you had a bonnet with you, it might have gone a little bit different. But anyway, so I thought, okay, I have the temperament and the disposition because I don't really have a temper, right? So I'm like, okay, no matter how this goes, I will be able to land this fact about the 600,000 Black women. I just know the pain. I just feel like collectively we're dealing with a spirit of rejection. Yeah. For me, it happened after the election. Mm-hmm. When you saw somebody who was so qualified lose in such a, like, it's like she got mollywopped. Like, I remember being out watching the map, like, so it just felt like collectively as Black women in that moment, we were rejected. And everything we've seen has been like aftermath of it. Yeah. And we know that the current administration, they're very retaliatory. Mm-hmm. And we were the only voting bloc, overwhelmingly, 92%, you're going to go after Black women. You're going to spin this DEI narrative that as if we don't outperform our counterparts. You know what I mean? And there are certain things that do come with Black women because every group has their pros and their cons. Yeah. And the truth of the matter is we are intimidating. Yeah. I'm rarely intimidated by anybody who's not a Black woman. But if I meet a Black woman, I'm like, listen, I'm like, she a lawyer with twins? Oh, let me do my birthday exercises. Like, you know what I mean? But if you're intimidated, hopefully you go into a stance of admiration and it makes you want to better yourself. But what happens a lot of times, like what we saw, right? She saw that beauty, she saw that joy, like they want to lash out at it. So I just wanted to speak to those women. And since this moment, because it's like, okay, I'm a community-minded person, but I'm trying to become more capitalistic because it's a coin, right? And we need coins for the community. You feel me? So since
to everything,
right? You know what I mean? A little razzle dazzle. Yeah. So since this moment, I've been like, dang, okay, I went viral, but what coin did I get from it? But what I got was what I went there for, was to speak for the 600,000. I have had women inboxing me, like the comments, and I'm just like, okay, let's pray. Like there was one woman who was like, okay, watching this gives me strength to go into work on Monday. I know what it was like before I was pushed out, when I'm there just being my joy. Because again, I'm doop-de-doop-de-doo. Like I'm literally a whimsical chick. You know what I mean? Yeah. And they're telling me, my supervisor, who was a woman of color, and I think that panel spoke to that too, that I'm a Black woman. I never went for that woman. I'm Black, honey, right? Literally told me I was intimidating. And I'm like, no, I'm not intimidating. You're just intimidated.
Yeah. And
like,
that's okay.
And that's okay. Yeah. And so in that moment where I lowered my voice because I wanted to I knew I could just tell that, okay, this is going to get some eyeballs on it. Yeah. I wanted every woman who has been gaslit, who has felt crazy, who has had maybe even her husband telling her, like, maybe, babe, you just toned it down. Yeah. I wanted to literally tone it down in that moment. Yeah. And so we could see that I would still be called aggressive.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And so you said that women were messaging you and asking for advice or telling you that you spoke to them. So I want us to each give one sentence to speak to that woman right now and let her know what she can do or how she can feel or just anything you want to say.
Okay, I have one thing I want to say that I thought about when she was speaking, and it kind of answers your question earlier about what can we do ourselves. And I feel like we can trust God, like you said. We can keep that strong fire inside of us and understand that as long as we're giving our best intention and we're being our best, that whatever is happening is working in our favor. Whether someone is out talking us, somebody's still going to get what they need from it. Whether I'm trying to take pictures of my art, I'm still going to get maybe even more sales than I need. As long as we're showing up as our authentic self, then God's going to make it all full circle.
Amen.
Dr. Kai?
Yeah, I would say I think that there's like a saying, something about a prophet gets no love in his own home or something of that nature. And if we just recognize that our voice is our power and we're really probably the most powerful creatures on this planet, that we're going to get pushed back. And so if we don't forget our power, then we will be able to continue to shine. And if we just keep that in the back of our mind, like even if they're trying to outpower us, we know the power that's within, and ultimately everything will work out for the good.
Amen. Banke, did you have anything you wanted to add?
It's a combination of what you guys both said. The scripture says all things work together for the good of those who love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. All things work together. It's not that all things in and of themselves, right? But you think about it. If this thing hadn't happened, if this thing hadn't happened, if this thing happened, then this thing wouldn't happen.
And we wouldn't be sitting here right now.
We wouldn't be sitting right here. And I wouldn't be a bestseller right now because y'all going to go out and buy my book and y'all going to book me to speak and do comedy and shake my titties. Okay.
I love it. Well, thank you all so much for joining us here in the lounge. And thank you all at home for joining us as well. And until next time, stay powerful.
This is our house.